Hello, everyone. I'm Tori.
And I'm Tim.
And this is the Stuck Together podcast. Episode
9.
Yeah.
I almost said Tori for some reason. I was like, I'm Tim.
I'm Tori, and I am also Tori.
I was like, oh, don't forget your line, dude.
Yeah. Got Frita on the Grum Cam once again.
Yep. And
Vibing.
So last podcast we talked about how Sage likes to push her way, like all the except for Anubis. Anubis and Scout are the only two who don't. But Freya and Sage love to just mess around in and around the computer stuff, and it always freaks me out. And Sage has gotten tied up more than once.
Yes.
And right before we started, she pushed her way under the desk. She's under there now.
She is. She's hanging.
Don't mess anything up down there. The other thing is she licks feet. She's a foot licker.
Yeah, she licks feet. It's really gross.
So weird. She'll just come up and just start really enjoying herself.
Mind you, she doesn't lick anything else. Like she's not like
she
Anubis.
doesn't want to just come lick you.
Yeah, like some dogs just like to lick, like Anubis. He just wants to lick everything. Your face, your hands,
wants to give you kisses, whatever.
Sage doesn't do that except for your feet.
She just really wants to get in there with that. It's just so weird, dude.
It's really weird. And she'll do it really unexpectedly. Like, you guys have been laying on the couch together for like an hour. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, feet.
Yeah.
I didn't know these were here. Every
time I'm like, you're crazy, get off me. And I tell her no and whatever. And she just, any chance she could get, she'll look at me and just like, is it okay now? And I'm like, no, it's still not okay.
Still not okay.
She's still
never will be okay.
Is dying to lick my feet.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. She likes them. And she's nasty like that.
So strange. Well, we were sitting on the couch earlier before we started the podcast, and Victoria started freaking out, which isn't out of the ordinary necessarily.
True.
But she said it was something good and then stopped herself and said, I have to wait for the podcast. So what do you got, Victoria?
So originally, because Tim told me that I should come up with something to talk about during the podcast because he talked so much about video games and like setting goals and stuff last time that he was like, you come up with something this time. And I was like, oh man, okay. And so what I wanted to talk about originally was I was gonna, because we had recently talked about like our favorite conspiracy theories and ones that kind of give us like the like intuitive like, oh, I don't know, that seemed like very just, it almost feels like your intuition knows that something's going on there, you know? And so I wanted to just talk a little bit more about different conspiracy theories that we really like enjoy learning about or that we already know a lot about or whatever. Cause we got so passionate about that when we were talking about it. And one of the main ones that I wanted to talk about was lost history, like ancient civilizations, like, alternative history, whatever that means. I know there's a lot of different meanings for that, but basically like I just kind of wanted to talk about the things that seem a little weird or a little off or just maybe that we don't know as much as we think we do type of thing. And then I saw an article that was posted. Is my mic up louder? I feel like I'm like,
no, you're just really talking loud.
Oh, okay.
You're really excited.
Got it. So an article that was released like a week or two ago, and I'll read the title now. At first I was like, oh God, is this another one of those like fake things that get my hopes up? But no. Hello. Okay. So.
Hello.
Sage is laying on my charging cord. And so
oh, yeah, of course she is.
All right.
Do you want to pull it up or?
We can. Should I email it?
You can email it to us
Okay.
at stucktogetherpod@gmail.com.
For everyone out there.
And I'm just going to, guys, please email us.
Yeah.
I was looking at this before the show because I was like, we need to make sure nobody's emailing us. And in case you're watching on YouTube, or not watching on YouTube, our number one email from is
Oh my God.
15 million emails from TikTok telling us nothing of importance.
I also
From me. You're logged in.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, let's open this up. Let's get down into this rabbit hole real quick.
Oh,
All right,
scroll up.
let me do this as a reaction. Study confirms age of oldest fossil human footprints in North America. 2 new lines of evidence support the 21,000 to 23,000 year age estimate of the footprints first described and dated in 2021. I don't know about those, so that's not super impressive, but
So I got really excited about this because
Alamo Gordo? The most interesting thing so far is the city name. Alamo Gordo.
Alamogordo, New Mexico. So basically what's really exciting is that the estimates kind of go back and forth, and we know, like, with, Graham Hancock and all of his, theories and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And not just him, but he's kind of the spokesperson for it a lot of the time. A lot of modern geology and, like, just science has kind of estimated that humans were in North America about 13,000 years ago.
Okay.
And a lot of people think that it's been much longer than that. And so basically with this study, and they like the ways that they tested this are super cool, and I kind of wanted to get into those too, because basically they proposed it in 2021, and of course the archaeological community and whatever were like, that's not enough evidence, because they love to push back on shit like this.
Yeah, if it didn't come from them, it's not true.
Yeah, and it's anything that goes outside of that main narrative is kind of it's very challenged. And so they have a lot of different ways of evidence, and they finally confirmed just like a week or two ago that it is for sure at least 23,000, like 21 to 23,000 at least.
Okay.
Because there's another part of this that's very interesting that they mention. I just saw it.
Well, let's start on it. Let's just dive in real quick. In September 2021, U.S. survey researchers and team announced that ancient human footprints were discovered in White Sands National Park, and that they're 21 to 23,000 years old, and that it pushes the known date of human presence in North America back by thousands of years, and implied that early inhabitants and megafauna coexisted for several millennia before the terminal Pleistocene extinction event. In a follow-up study published today in Science, researchers used 2 new independent approaches to date the footprints, both of which resulted in the same age range as the original estimate. So basically, they didn't think stuff was that old. Now it's as old as other stuff that matches the same time period, and it's been checked like 2 or 3 times, and we can all kind of agree that it's that old.
Correct.
Is what it's saying.
Yep. So they used pollen that was found embedded in the footprints, as well as quartz particles that were they used the, I guess we can read it. But the main thing that's like really kind of important about this is that it's basically, it confirmed that they were correct in making the extraordinary claim that humans were present in North America during the last glacial maximum, which was when like America was covered in ice.
Right.
Which means if there were footprints that dated during that time, they most likely weren't there. Like, there's another article that I'm going to send that's a little bit more like, This is literally from like the US government. And so it's very kind of just like, you know, factual, just like this is what happened, blah, blah, blah. But there's another article that kind of goes more into the nuance of what that could imply type thing.
Okay.
It's not conspiracy-y or anything. It's just like, so yeah.
So real quick, let's cover this. Pollen samples also helped us understand the broader environmental context for the same time that the footprints were made, and that the pollen samples came from plants typically found in cold and wet glacial conditions, in stark contrast with pollen from the modern playa, which reflects the desert vegetation found there today. So there were plants there that would only be there if it was like not what it is today, and it was totally different like it used to be way back then. Mm-hmm. And that they used pollen samples to do that.
Yeah, and then if you could scroll down just a little bit, in addition to the pollen samples, the team used a different type of dating called optically stimulated luminescence, which dates the last time quartz grains were exposed to sunlight. Using this method, they found that quartz samples collected within the footprint-bearing layers had a minimum age of 21,500 years, providing further support to the radiocarbon results. Hi. Oh!
Frita, what do you want from me?
Hello.
Attention.
She said, I will not stand for this lunacy. She's part of big archaeology.
She's
part of the agenda.
She's trying to distract us from the truth.
But so this I wanted to show first because this is from the US government, and it's like, you know, this is like a real thing. Because for a second I was like, I don't know. Well, I guess it's from the US Geological Survey, which is different, but so like it's a for sure thing. They like finally confirmed it after like 2 years of speculating whether or not they had enough evidence, which is super exciting. And essentially I'll send the other article as well. So this is just kind of like the cold facts of just like how they did it.
Okay. Well, let's have you make your case, and then we'll talk about it for like what you want to talk about first and why it's important, and then we can discuss.
Yeah.
I never believe anything. People are like, how do you believe that, or how do you don't believe that? And I'm like, the answer is don't believe anybody.
I just think it's huge progress that the scientific community is finally acknowledging that we've been here longer than, at least in America, longer than 13,000 years. And it's very, very important to Native Americans. And I can kind of explain that a little bit too.
Okay.
So I'm kind of wanting to look at these in the order that I like discovered them, because I think it was really helpful to kind of, and these articles are from, the first one's from CNN, the second one's from Washington Post. However people feel about those, I have no idea. They seemed pretty unbiased, which was good. So the first one,
scientists say they've confirmed evidence that humans arrived in the Americas far earlier than previously thought.
Yep.
Look at that print. Look at that guy's big toe. I'm concerned about that man.
That is quite the toe.
Is that what we used to do? Did people used to use that?
Can you scroll back up?
Yep.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I'm getting
You're
sarcastic.
Right there. All right. So it was a bombshell moment for archaeology, seemingly rewriting a chapter of the human history. Again, I think that we've been here longer than that, but I think it's huge that they're acknowledging that they were wrong. It's like, it's super, super important.
Well, they're not really, yeah.
Like basically they're saying that, like, you know, archaeology for all these years, you know, turns out we've been here way longer. Like they're willing to accept that, you know, because there was enough evidence. But so this date So the footprints were pressed into the mud 21 to 23,000 years ago. This date dramatically pushed back the timeline of humans' history in the Americas, the last landmass to be settled by prehistoric people. So we think. Again, who knows? But so they were discovered in the Tularosa Basin near the ancient lake in White Sands National Park. So were made at a time when many scientists think that massive ice sheets had sealed off human passage into North America, indicating that humans arrived in the region even earlier. So that's the big thing.
Right.
Is that they can only date it back 23,000 years, but during that time we were in like the maximum glacial period. And so things were frozen over. People weren't probably living there. So mainly meaning that 23,000 years is like a minimum age for these. So some archaeologists question the age of the footprints established by those initial findings. There's a lot of speculation, and so that's why they did a follow-up study for the 2 new lines of evidence, basically. And so now it's basically like undeniable from what they've done. So let's see. They're always... I fed them, I promise.
No, as soon as we come in here and record, they all get really excited. They're like, hey, we're in here. We're doing something new. You guys want to like pay attention to us?
Yeah, so when and how early humans first migrated to the Americas has long been debated and remains poorly understood. Current estimates for the first inhabitants range from 13,000 years to more than 20,000. However, the earliest archaeological evidence for the region's settlement is sparse and often controversial. They go through the pollen, the luminescence of the quartz, that type of stuff. That they were in fact present during the last glacial maximum. And then where is it? Sorry, it looks different than it did on my phone, so I'm trying to like remember where I saw it. Can this get out of here? Okay. So it's not clear whether early humans arrived by boat or came over a land bridge from Asia, nor despite advances in genetic evidence, it is clear whether one or many populations of early modern humans made the long journey. And then, however, she said that the new studies finding overall strongly indicate a human presence in the Americas around the time of the last glacial maximum, a period between 19,000 and 26,000 years ago, when 2 massive ice sheets covered the northern third of North America. The ice and cold temperatures would have made a journey between Asia and Alaska impossible during that time, meaning the people who made the footprints likely arrived much earlier. And so, it super cool. And maybe I think it's way cooler than you do. I don't know.
Let's just go to the last article.
Okay. Oh my God. Really?
Yeah, the Washington Post and the bigger...
Well, I already read it on my phone, so I'm going to just read it from my phone.
You pay for the Washington Post?
No. I don't know why it's fine on my phone, but...
Do you have a reader or something? Reading version?
Let's see. Footprints.
Let's just leave these little footprints on the screen.
Footprints. Okay. So,
she's scanning through the study, guys. It'll just be a sec
sorry.
to get to the important information.
there was a part in this where they talked about, so, there was some like pushback and people wanted more evidence, and people are like what's more evidence than 3 different like proofs basically. But so of course I should have screenshotted this.
Pleistocene.
Sorry guys. Oh my god, this article is so much longer than I thought it was.
You were so excited reading it earlier. It just went so fast.
Yeah. So yeah, the White Sands footprints, which appear, this is the part about the natives and everything. So the White Sands footprints, which appear to have been made during the last glacial maximum, would require a radical rethinking of long-standing assumptions about how people got here, one that has been welcomed by some scholars and rejected by others. For many indigenous people, the study is simply a confirmation of things they already knew from knowledge passed down over generations. Says Kim Pascal Charlie, I think, a member of the Pueblo of Acoma, who has visited the site many times. These are ancestral footprints, she said, or he said, I'm not sure. And then Paulette Steves, an indigenous archaeologist and a professor at Algoma University, has compiled a database of the evidence for her earlier human presence in the Americas. She said that the White Sands find is only one strand in a growing body of evidence that people were in the Americas much earlier than archaeologists long believed. And let's see. Think about the rest of the world and how much our understanding of human evolution has grown and been informed due to more archaeological work in the advancement of sciences. However, in the Americas, it has remained static. Steve said, when it comes to adding indigenous voices and expanding the time frame for indigenous peoples in the Americas, there is still a lot of racism and bias in American archaeology. And yeah, so you're talking about a potential paradigm shift regarding the peopling of North America. We have good models to say when people showed up and got on the scene. It will upset everything we think we know. And there was another part. So there was a lot of pushback, and they were asked basically like, you know, how much more evidence do you need? That kind of stuff. I'm doing the worst job at explaining this properly because I was not prepared. But yeah, it's important because, you know, like, I don't know, the indigenous population story is very important, and saying that humans weren't here for that long before, you know, the white Englishman came, you know, it makes Native Americans sound a lot more primitive than they probably actually were. And so it is an important part of the discussion that I definitely don't know enough about to like really speak on too much. But just out of all of this, I think the main thing is that, like, this is something that we're seeing. This is something that archaeologists are still pushing back on, but a lot are accepting, a lot are eager to learn more. And it's like the more studies like this that happen and are allowed to happen, the deeper we can go into the actual other stuff. And I know you have a lot of different thoughts than I do on this, but I can't hear myself now.
You're good.
Okay.
It just kept clipping, so.
Okay. So am I really, really quiet now though?
I didn't turn it down that much. Here you
go. Okay.
All right, let's keep going.
All right. Well, I feel like, I don't know, what are your...
Well, so you were looking through a lot of stuff. Can we boil down like what you were so excited about and what like a basic overview of everything, like real quick?
Yeah, I'm just excited that there's a new, you know, like there's new scientific evidence that's coming out that we've been here longer in America. And that's something that especially people like Graham Hancock have fought so hard for and have been chastised for saying. And so I got excited that it's a clear as day thing, because I think a lot of times with this lost history or alternate history or whatever, like the only times you see these articles are on like pretty sketchy websites. You're just kind of like, man, like, is this true? I don't know. And I'm not saying that like it has to come from like a reputable, article or whatever to be true.
A mainstream approved source.
Yeah. I think it's just a big deal, kind of like all of the alien talk going on, that it's becoming people are willing to talk about it. That maybe wouldn't have been before. But yeah, I'm excited. I was excited because it's a cool find. And I like the implication that since it's dated back during a time that was very cold and inhabitable in America, that probably means that that's just the furthest back that they could date it. It doesn't actually mean it's only that old, because most likely people weren't walking around barefoot during that time in America. Mm-hmm. So most likely they were a lot older than that. So that's why I was excited. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just acknowledgement from the mainstream pushing back stuff that they weren't saying before, when other people were like, hey, that people were here and all this, and they were like, you're dumb, you're stupid, you didn't follow what we said, and now they're like, oh, this is a thing,
Mm-hmm. Well, and yeah, it's it's tough to I think there's a lot more to this discussion. I think that it's kind of just scraping the surface. But the shifting paradigm is pretty interesting. But I do, my more like conspiracy brain thinks that it's like we haven't been told a lot of stuff, and like
they know more when they're not sharing.
No, just that the past like really isn't what they tell us it is.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's like, as much as this is exciting, I also am like, okay, cool. Like, we've got a long way to go type thing. But it coincided with the like conspiracy theories I wanted to talk about, because it is just kind of about, what we've been told isn't everything, because like that belief that people were only in America for X amount of years, normally around 13,000, has been like, if you said anything other than that, like, nope, you were incorrect, you were a pseudoscientist, whatever. And so I think it's more so seeing like what other stuff are people being chastised for that is actually incorrect, the side chastising them is incorrect, which I think a lot of things are that way.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah,
well, that's really cool for them to, I don't know what prompted them, like maybe they just couldn't not talk about it at this point or something, but yeah, from whatever I have heard about the archaeological community, they're like, I don't know how you would define that community exactly, but they're basically like, we know what happened, we're going to tell you. If anybody says anything else, you're not right. So yeah, it's super cool that they are saying this now.
Well, and I'm still like, as much as I'm very into the spiritual and kind of more conspiracy side of things, and like questioning and all of that, I did want to be a scientist, and there is something to be said that once it is acknowledged by the general public and these like reputable news sources, it's like just that much more like this is like absolutely like a thing. I think it's just more and more confirmation of things that people have known for a very long time. Kind of like the person in the article said, like indigenous people are just, it's being confirmed something they've known for a very long time, that like their people were here long before, you know? And so as much as I want to be like, you know, don't listen to big media and like, you know, whatever, it's like sometimes it is validating to like be like, oh, well, now they're finally talking about it too. So like, does that make sense? There is that part of me that still loves like scientific advancement and like, you know, discoveries like that. Like I think you have to question everything, which I definitely do, but also like celebrate when science does seem to be making some progress in the right direction, like emotionally, empathetically, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, so. Yeah,
it's good stuff.
Yeah. I don't. I don't know. I was excited about it, but yep. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't get excited about science stuff like that, but that's why we're different people.
Yeah, well, I figured it could kind of... I thought you would find it kind of exciting because it's like proving science wrong. Like what we've been told.
I think everybody's wrong. So I don't think... I mean, for them to be like...
Are you wrong then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think the thing is like, I'm probably wrong about tons and tons of stuff. Opinions or things that I've heard or whatever, and... I think the biggest thing is I'm like super big on like, I have no idea. I'm not saying this happened. I'm not saying that happened. I'm not saying whatever. I'm saying as a human being who is alive, there's stuff that makes more sense to me than other stuff, but I don't like trust what anybody says, especially when you start getting back into history like that. You know, that's what, like, we have trials of murder cases and people are like, we don't know what happened. And we're like, but this definitely happened millions of years ago. And it's like, okay, dude. Yeah, for sure. You're so smart. Like, I don't, you know, not to say that it didn't, but just the conviction people have of like, this happened at this point. It's like, sure, dude, have fun. Go try and figure out the world. And I don't think it's a bad thing to try and figure out where we came from or whatever. But I just like, you know, and I think there could be some valuable information in finding out where we really came from or how this really happened or whatever. But, you know, I just don't care because people just want to be right and they just want to prove their side. And then, you know, when it's finally like they can't defend it anymore, then they're like, oh, okay, well, this happened. And you're like, there. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the more evidence that's presented, the more ability people have to change their mind and form their own opinion. I think that this is just more like, I don't know, it's tough to talk about because I think that there's, I don't know, if you don't trust or believe anything, then I can't, like, I don't know. Because I feel like there is stuff that you're very adamant about.
Like what?
Well, like, I guess you are more in the boat of, like, you know, just, I don't know, like, we've talked about space and stuff like that. But I don't know. Maybe I was, I don't know. Now I feel weird about talking about it because I don't know. If you're like, I don't believe anything, then I don't know what to.
Well, I think we all try to come up with different worldviews. Like, for Like Scout over here doesn't care about where the world came from, where it's going, or how anything works. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but humans always do for some reason, and it like sets us apart. And I think it's fun to think about stuff, but like, you know, with the space stuff, Victoria's talking about when we'll talk about space stuff and like flat Earth theory and stuff like that. And, you know, everyone says flat earthers are like so dumb and so stupid. And I don't think the world's flat, but I think that there's a lot that just seems off. And it just seems like we're not being told the whole truth from people who may or may not know because they have rockets and stuff and they have things and they've tried things. And, you know, you can either, there's always two camps. You can either believe everything you're told by a certain party, or you can stay open. And I guess I'm just in the stay open category. And
But you just said you don't like believe them. That's not being open. You're being like, I don't trust anything.
no, I just don't trust like because I feel like we want things to be irrefutably true.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be right. We want it to be true. And in a certain case, we need to be for things to work. You know, that's how we built the engines that run our cars. That was a true thing, like science wise, was getting small explosions into chambers that pushed wheels around and then we can drive them. You know, that's provable science that you could say, well, combustion engines aren't real. It's like, well, I can show you that they are. But when we start talking about, you know, space, long time history ago, evolution, all this stuff, it's like you can't really prove it, you
No, you
know?
can't.
And so I think with that stuff, the thing that bothers me is that people are like, this is this and this is that and this happened. It's like with all that stuff, I feel like we can only ever get to like the most likely scenario. And I think some of those are super interesting, but I don't just like believe any of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's kind of why I'm saying this is exciting, because we're getting closer to that most believable option.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's, with something like this, it's not so much of why are we here and like, you know, how did humans come about? Because that's a whole other debate, you know. It's more of, once we were here, like, was there stuff going on all around the world? Not just in the like the Fertile Crescent that's expanded outwards. It's like, was there more developed societies going on everywhere? And North America is kind of that last continent, like they said, where they haven't found much, you know? And so it's just, Native Americans have been seen as just kind of like primitive people who were like hunter-gathering, kind of like whatever, like honestly sometimes seen as even less than hunter-gatherers, you know, because hunter-gatherers were they were just people. They still were intelligent. They still like built monuments and stuff. Like they weren't just like cavemen basically.
No.
And so, you know, it's like I think the main reason it excites me is because like my imagination starts going of all of the things that could mean, and were societies more interconnected than we thought they were, type thing. There's just so many facets to that, and in a lot of ways I do believe that there's a lot of history that was destroyed or rewritten, or, you know, but the hard part about that, and as much as I wanted to talk about it with the, you know, talking about our favorite conspiracies, it's like you get shut down very quickly because there's this undertone of, you can just be called a lot of really bad names if you start talking about this stuff. Like, people think you're racist, or, you know, all of that. And so I completely lost my train of thought on that. All of that to say, I think that there's a lot that was lost to time, and the more that we can prove through the ways that we can, like, you know, scientific ways, I feel like the more we can find. And I am one of those people that I want to know, and I don't want to know the exact, I want all the information possible, if that makes sense. I don't want a specific answer. I just know that the answer that we have isn't everything, and like kind of like what you're saying. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it just with a history that's like I don't know if we'll ever know. I don't know if we'll ever decide that we pretend like we're like super super smart because we have like computers and technology and planes and whatever. And how do you know that we're not gonna have? How do you know Yellowstone's not gonna erupt, and then everything gets wiped out? 99% of the people in the world die out. Humanity starts over again or something, and then in 5,000-10,000 years, it happens all over, and there's like a doppelganger of you and me going, did you know that people said that there's people that 10,000 years ago that live? It's like we don't know. It could be that it could be that nothing is as old as we thought, or it could be that we've had millions and millions and millions of years of humans here, and it just keeps refreshing and restarting and doing something. Like, we don't know, And I think it's, I'm not sure how like important it is to know. I think that's one of my big things is I really like thinking about it. And I think when we talk about it, sometimes it starts to be like, if there's people who do know and who are keeping things from us, that would be wrong, because sometimes that's what it feels like. And that's why conspiracy theories get born, is because people are like, wait, this doesn't make sense totally, or something. And then they're like, well, let me try to pick up the pieces. And so then that's a conspiracy theory starts being like, well, what about this? And not to say that, not to say anything in particular about it, but I think that's one of the bigger things. But I don't know, we don't know if something 1,000 years ago we got spliced with, aliens from outer space or whatever, and we're just a genetic experiment that's either being watched or got left behind, and they were like, yeah, we're out, like, deal with it, and now we're just here. Or whether we evolved, or whether some divine God made us, or like any of those things are like equally probable in my mind.
Yeah.
Because we don't know.
Yeah, we don't.
And truth is stranger than fiction, like they say. So it's like, who knows?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They say, did you know that like Indians and Hindu people think that humans have been here for millions of years? Their records in the Bhagavad Gita go back like millions of years of having people here.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I think at least like biologically, like Homo sapiens have been around for like 300 million years. But yeah, they say like so much of that time was like they were not keeping records and stuff. And I don't believe that. I'm more subscribed to like, humans are prone to start building civilization and keeping records. And
is that what they say? What's the grand evolution timeline that everybody is like, this is what happened?
The first record of a Homo sapien is in Africa, I think 3 million years ago.
What's the is this in tens?
No. Millions of years ago.
So 3 million years ago.
Yep.
Not 300.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I don't know what I'm thinking. Sorry.
So the one thing that I kind of thought about was, what about, so it says about 7,000, we get like a little grape head, octopus looking person that gradually gets round.
Yeah.
Over like 3 million years. And then 1 million years ago was like Homo erectus, and we diverted from monkeys at like 9 million years ago is what this timeline says.
Uh-huh.
Encyclopedia Britannica, if you're gonna get a source, that's the one you'd get probably.
Yeah.
So we started popping off around 9 million years ago is what people say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so how I don't know. One thing that everybody always falls back on is the
Oh, I was thinking 300,000 years ago for something. Sorry about that, guys.
300,000.
I think the first fossil was discovered like 300,000 years ago
well,
or
and
something.
we use radiocarbon dating for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how solid is radiocarbon dating? Like how definitive?
It's really up for debate. It's really
Because that's always my thing is they're like, we dated this to 3 trillion years ago.
yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm a fucking banana.
Yeah, there's carbon dating.
Color me
is,
purple, it slapped me silly,
Yeah.
Mr. Scientist Man.
Yeah, there's definitely debate, and I know a lot of like there's been a lot of debate, mainly in my life from Christians that have talked about carbon dating. And how, because no science is foolproof. There's inconsistencies in a lot of stuff. And I know that the main people who, I was about to say advocate against evolution, that's not a thing. But like who like don't believe in evolution or are trying to prove otherwise do talk about the inconsistencies with carbon dating. But there are other ways as well, kind of like how we saw with the bioluminescence of the quartz. I think it's just luminescence, not bioluminescence. There's people love to talk about the carbon dating, but there's plenty of other ways to date stuff. But at the same time, I'm not a scientist in the field, so I say that just knowing that there is something out there, not that I actually have ever done it and witnessed it. So could just be people are saying like, we do this super fancy science thing, believe it, you never know.
Well, and I think there's a lot of time too where, especially with history, prehistory, whatever, all ancient stuff, I feel like a lot of times it does come down to religion versus the other guys. And I think that plays a huge part because sometimes it feels like science isn't trying to just be true. It feels like science was like, there's no way a magic man made everything, and I'm going to go figure out what everything was and make sure that I have a whole system to lean on as my worldview that doesn't involve your religion. Mm-hmm. And so I think that it feels to me like when some people talk about it, or have evidence or do whatever, sometimes it just feels like, it's more about this side versus that side than it is about, let's be honest about what we can and can't do, and about trying to find out the truth about human beings and how things went. And, that's what it feels like a lot of the time to me, is it feels like the hubris of human beings who need to be right and not about the truth about human beings in our reality.
Mm-hmm.
So it says radiocarbon dating or carbon-14 dating is a scientific method that can accurately determine the age of organic material as old as approximately 60,000 years. And so I'm pretty sure carbon dating doesn't have to do with the half-life of a carbon isotope.
Yep.
So that basically you can reverse engineer where a carbon isotope is at, and from that data you can extrapolate how old a particular thing is.
Right. And I think that there is debate of, like how reliable that is, and that's a good question. Like, yeah, that's interesting.
So it says, why can't we carbon date after 1950? calibration presents another challenge. With the dawn of the industrial age, humans began emitting much more carbon dioxide, diluting the amount of radiocarbon in the atmosphere. Nuclear testing affects radiocarbon levels too, and dramatically increased carbon-14 levels starting in the 1950s. So magically in the 1950s, they were like, you know what, this doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So I just, there's always stuff like that where it's like, well, that's just so convenient, isn't it? That we can't use this thing you invented now to do this thing that, it just, I think and that's why I think conspiracy theories start to become convenient, is because people don't want to just come out and say, we don't know.
Yeah.
Because people have to. They can't just say, look, I don't know that anything's true before I was born because that's the first time I remember consciousness. Like, they can't just admit that they're a human being and they're doing the best they can. They have to say, I know, I have the truth. This is what it is. And it just bothers me. That's what bothers me.
Yeah, well, and I think the more that because I am totally under the belief of like, yeah, people don't really know, we don't know a lot. And people who claim to know, the wisest men admit that they're not wise at all,
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's because it's not, if you're one claiming that you know all this stuff just because you're a scientist or, whatever, it's like, well, there is something to be said that science has come a long way and everything, but there's also, that science is it was written by men. It was not invented by humans, but it has been only taught by humans to other humans for however many years. It's like, I get that you want to cling on to that, kind of like how religious people want to cling on to their religion, because without it, it's scary. But you also have to be able to be like, it could be wrong. Like, it could, especially with this, where it's like, yeah, after, like, can you imagine people in a couple thousand years trying to, well, more than that, but like trying to carbon date us right now, because it talked about how it diluted the radiocarbon in the atmosphere during the industrial age. Like, I just wonder, okay, so what, like, how does that not correlate in your head that maybe at another point in time it was altered as well for some sort of reason like this? And it's extremely, like, let's see, how accurate is it really? Yeah. So most rocks of interest are much older than what carbon dating is good for.
Well, and if it goes off carbon, it looked like one thing at the top said that the half-life of carbon rolls around 60,000 years or whatever, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that they can only go back that far.
Yeah.
Which means that we can't use it for anything beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm over here like, oh, we know that the half-life of carbon is 60,000 years, do we?
Yeah, that's the other thing is, we can guess, but yeah, it's like we know the half-lives of elements, but at the same time, like, it's only a guess, Well,
I just think that, like, with my car example, I think that's a perfect example, because I think science and that type of thing is at its best when it's functional and when there's nothing at risk for, we used science to make cars, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cars work.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you need to know. We drive cars. That's something that science and engineering made. Cool. I can go outside and point to my car, show someone from another planet. I can get in, start the key, go drive it somewhere. Yeah. This is my car. Science made this car. Cool. That's great. That's what science is. Science isn't, this is what happened millions of years ago. Listen to me. This is the truth. If you don't, I'm going to call you these bad names and say that you're unintelligent. Yeah. That's not what science is. Mm-hmm. Science is not what's going to happen in the future either. Yeah. Science is not, in 10 years, in 15 years, in 200 years, because you don't know.
Yeah,
and
you don't.
There's no way for you to say for sure what will or won't happen in the future.
Yeah, you can estimate. You can guess. But I think science is really bad at saying that it's a guess. or that, you know,
Yeah.
this could or could not happen. Especially, I mean, we've talked about that with kind of like climate change statistics. That's a big one where I absolutely believe that everything that we're doing is not helping the earth by any means. All the pollution, all the emissions, you know, that kind of stuff. But, you know, how they say by this, you know, we're past the point of no return. We're, you know, we have to get to zero emissions by this year or else it's too late type thing. You know, it's like, I think that telling people that kind of stuff is really important and opens people's eyes, but it's not helpful to say that this is a fact. You know, I think that it definitely there needs to be some nuance in science that is very lacking. Like it's very matter of fact, and science has been proven wrong time and time again. And that's, we've talked about, that's the whole point of science. That's what makes it so reliable, is that it proves itself wrong over and over again. That's how innovation works. That's how progress works. And so for people to be like, no, this is right, this is like what's happening, it's like that goes against the entire idea of science and the entire idea of growth and progression. To be like, this is it, don't ask any questions type attitude.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not how we got that. We didn't get here to be this scientifically advanced by doing that.
Well, and it's like you said, it can be very existential and scary to think about if you don't have an answer. If you start thinking about, well, how did it happen? What is life? What are we? Why are we here? And you know, that starts to get really weird if you have to be like, no idea. But I think I'm really comfortable with that because I don't have a personal reason to need an answer. And so for me, it's like, whatever's true, I'm on board. I don't care. I don't care I don't care about being wrong. I care about the truth and what's actually happening. And if someone wants to make a great case and show me all this evidence and like those footprints that people were, you know, definitively in North America, but at this point relative to our own point, dope. But like, also, so what? Like, and not to say so what for the sake of those Native Americans, for their people. I mean, to argue the fact that the people of Native North Americans were not idiots is like fucking dumb. I think that's just stupid that they still have to defend that. But, you know, just to say that anybody was anywhere is like, okay, for me personally, because I'm like, I think the important thing for me too is starts to be like, so what? So what if this happened? Like, are we going to sit, like, that's cool. And I think there is something to be said about, well, if we don't know our history, we're going to repeat it, or this or that, or whatever, which I know that has to do more with sociopolitical events than, you know, the general history of human beings naturally and biologically. But I think it just gets to this point for me where I'm like, are you selling me something? Like, why do you need me to know what your thing is and prove me wrong or make me believe your side? Or like, does it, you know, that's why I think I mentioned the alien thing. 'Cause it's like, well, if that were true, then maybe that would change things, you know, that might change our current day. But I think I'm also just a very pragmatic person who's like, if I can't use it and if it's not applicable right now, it's just a fun idea. It's just a fun idea that we can play with. We could argue about, we could show evidence, we could do whatever. But besides that, it's just a fun idea.
Yeah. Well, and I think I am intuitively, I feel, and there's been a lot of cases where this has happened. I'm really like justice minded, and you know that about me. And I know that a lot of history has been erased purposefully. And that I truly believe is one of the worst things you can do to a population of people.
Oh yeah.
Is take away their history. And so I think that's why I'm so invested in this type of thing, because I know how many times this has happened, and not just for Native Americans. You know, I think that's a huge part of it. So much of their history was erased, so much that they don't know, so much that we don't know. You know, there's so much to that facet of it, but there's plenty of other societies where that's happened, or where, and I'm saying that from a place of allegedly, like, I don't know that for sure. There have been cases where we know for sure that it happened, but I just know because, like, I just intuitively have that feeling of, like, many, like, a lot of history was erased. And I think more so it was erased or stolen. I feel like there's quite a bit that people were like, yeah, we did that. Like, we did that thing. That's
Right.
it. You know, we built
Right.
that, you know, where no, you didn't, you know, that kind of thing. And that gets into a whole other facet of things. But I think that it really, it plays more into my emotions than anything, for me at least. I don't really care if because yeah, it doesn't mean much for me, like, if there were more, if we were more advanced in the past, besides maybe we could learn a thing or two, you know. I think it's more of, I have that feeling that, like, you know, like, no one deserves to be erased, you know.
Oh no.
And nothing deserves to be intentionally, like, forgotten. And so whenever we find stuff like this, I'm like, those people are finally getting, like, an acknowledgement. They had no idea at the time when they're, like, stepping in mud, you know, whatever. But it's like, those people, like, we know about them now. Like, we know, and people are willing to say they were there, you know. So yeah, I think, especially with the advanced civilization stuff, I feel like there's just been a lot that's been forgotten or intentionally taken away.
Well, and that's brutal. That's horrible.
Yeah.
That's absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
And I mean, coming at it from that angle, I mean, it does make it a little different. And, you know, I didn't know, of course, I wouldn't know, because it sounds like that's the design of this type of thing. You know, that this was a deal. I know that in traditional Native American culture, they say that the Great Spirit put each tribe in its specific place that it lived in on purpose, and that it was basically gifted, the land that each tribe had was gifted to it by the Great Spirit, and that it was sovereign over that land.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And I know that their culture is super rich and, you know, goes back, but yeah, I mean, it just, even that, I just get so confused and angry when I hear stuff like that people do that. I mean, I know people are dicks and kill each other and take their land or whatever, but, like, just throwing insult to injury and erasing stuff, I mean, it's just dumb. So I mean, a discovery like this is obviously a huge W for Native Americans, if this helps to prove that, you know, they're not fucking idiots. Which,
well, yeah, and
who
I
the
don't
fuck thinks that?
I know. I think it's I think there's a little bit more to that, maybe less so like that they were dumb or whatever, but more so that they
Well,
were
I get
here
it.
for a
I get
very
it.
long time.
Well-
Like, this was their, you know, obviously it's a little too late. We're all here. The colonization happened, you know, I'm here, whatever. But that at the time, like, they had been there for so long. Like, it was their land. And then there's no good way to colonize somewhere, you know? But that, you know, I think after being told for so long, just so many lies and so much, like, just...
I didn't know that they were supposedly not here for very long.
Well, yeah, it's not...
I didn't have any idea about it. I just knew that
Yeah.
they were here, and that apparently they had come over. People were always, like, so confused at how people got here because human beings were so dumb they couldn't build boats, or they came over on glaciers through Russia at some point. That's all I ever heard.
Yeah.
Or remember from my indoctrination at public places where I would go take textbooks and stuff like that.
Well, and it's really hard to know, like, because, yeah, I'm speaking on this, but at the same time, it's like I wasn't there, and I definitely don't know enough about really any culture to, like, really speak on the history that is still around about it. But I think, like, the longer people are in a certain area, the more advanced they become, the more, you know, societies are built and stuff like that. And so I think that, as much as there can be truth behind the stuff that we're taught about Native Americans, I think it's important, like, to kind of, I don't know. I think it's weird. There's an undertone of, I don't even know. I get uncomfortable talking about any of it because I don't want to say, like, the wrong thing. But
we're all just trying to learn, and we're trying to get better.
It's just from the, American elementary, middle school, high school, way of learning things. You learn that, like, white men considered Native American people savages, which is not cool. Like, at least we're at that point where we're taught that's not cool. But they're considered a very, like, wild people, almost like they were just, like, running around the land doing whatever. And, like, and I mean that in the sense of that's kind of the picture that's painted. Just when you're an American kid learning about it. And so I think that there's plenty more, like, implications to the whole thing. But yeah, Native American, as well as many other cultures, I think I like when we just get to learn more about them. And, like, when we discover new sites and, like, monuments where we're like, what the hell is this for? And we had no idea there was, like, a city here, basically, like a civilization. It's so, because sometimes it's not even that they were intentionally erased. It's just they're lost to time,
right,
and weather and changing of the biome of the space and everything like that. Like, it's just I think there's something really rewarding and satisfying about uncovering those things, because it just adds to our story more and more. I don't know what that story is, but I do like, it's like clicking in puzzle pieces, and it's like every time, no matter how far you are away from the whole puzzle, every time you get two pieces to fit together, you're like, yes, like, just a little closer,
Yeah.
And again, I'm not hoping for a specific answer, and I'm okay if there never is an answer. I'm just more so, I get excited that, like, more history is exposed. And I thought about like the people where the first human skeleton ever discovered, like, it was a she had no idea how important she was going to be, like,
right, yeah,
this person walking around the sands, no idea. There's something very cool about that, and there's something very, I think, like, in our, like, souls when we're around, like, antique stuff and everything, there's just this, like, weird, like, wow, we're both humans, like, we're both, I think, especially because, like, just as a woman, when I see, like, a really old comb that a woman used to use, I'm just like, oh my god, I do the same thing. Like, it's just, like, this weird thing, like, I don't know, I think I'm a little bit more emotional about it than you maybe are. I get a little bit more, like, mushy about it. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's fair. I think that's cool to think about, all the people who lived before us and were just like us, basically, because I think as much as we want, like I was making fun of humans earlier, we just think we're so different and so advanced and so smart, and I just think we're basically the same, you know. And I think that's the other thing is, instead of continuing to look back, I'm like, well, why can't we look forward, and try and, I mean, I just can't talk about it too much because I just get so angry because people just always piss me off. And, you mentioned, like, this was the Native Americans' land. And I'm like, I don't think any land belongs to anybody. I think humans should have the right to live and to be able to find a way to get resources and survive. But I don't think that pieces of land should absolutely belong to a person or a, you know, race of people. And that's the whole point of like property in general, right? Is this is mine. I can legally tell you to fuck off. And because I deserve a place to live. And that's how like certain people figured it out in the world at some point, was this is my place and I get to live here. Right. And that makes sense pragmatically. But at the end of the day, it's not your land. It's just a way that, in the way I see it, is like, it's not anybody's land. It is the earth, and you are a human who lives on it. We just need to be able to carve out a spot so we can defend ourselves from other people, to say, I live here. You just like, let me live here. Don't come and take my shit. And I think that, you know, that's the huge injustice with the Native Americans, was they didn't have the means to be like, go fuck off. Like they got taken advantage of. And that's another super interesting thing about the Native Americans, was with the Silk Road and like Europe through Asia and the Middle East, especially, you know, like the Arabic invented math, right? And then the English and the Europeans, or, you know, the Romans or whoever was there, invented like religion or whatever. And then, you know, Chinese people invented gunpowder. And so like you might have three separate societies who each had a thing, right? But since they had the Silk Road, and since they did have a landmass connecting them, eventually all those ideas got spread out.
Yeah.
That's, you know, and so you look at all these different, all of the individuals who all had ideas, who all started developing all of them in their own societies, their own communities, who then adopted them, who then traded them to other societies, who then started to get this exponential growth of technology that like expanded. And then you look at North America, who didn't have all the same exchange of information. They were at a huge disadvantage because they weren't allowed to trade ideas with other people in the same way that, you know, all of these interconnected societies did slowly over time, to where it started snowballing, to where, you know, the Native Americans might have caught up in this like exponential differential of time, but they didn't, because it was exponential. And then by the time people came here, they were like, you don't have all this technology. And it's like, yeah, well, you're not a genius. You just had the advantage of being interconnected with a shit ton of people who all had good ideas and worked them out over time.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what happened, really. And not only that, but just the evil of men and the evil of people who want to conquer and who want to impose themselves on other people, which kind of brings us full circle, because that's what we were talking about with the archaeological society. It's like, they still do that. Yeah. Did they do it by killing people and raping them and stealing their land? No, but now we do it with ideas. Yeah. Now we say, my idea's right, and I'm going to come into your land and plunder and pillage until you adopt my ideas.
And like social exile if you say anything other
exactly.
than that.
Yeah. And so it's like, we're getting better,
yeah.
kind of.
We're not being
sometimes,
like physically violent anymore most of the time.
And which is even, you can't even say that, because, you know, we still have tons of, around the world, we're still having issues and stuff. So, I mean, you know, that's a whole thing too. But we, on a large scale, we have gotten better at a lot of different things. But as far as like, this definitely happened in the past for this reason, and humans came from this place. It's just, I think people just, it's like so easy to see in people that just want to have it. They want to know it. They want to be able to tell you, and they want to be smart, because people want to be smart. And, you know, they want to be informed. They want to be educated. And I just think that we can't, you know, I think that the biggest thing for me too is I probably would have still been that way, but I think the thing for me was psychedelics was the biggest thing. That really like broke down those barriers and was like, reality is not what I thought it was necessarily. I don't know what reality is. You know, it started to break down these barriers of things that I'd built up in my mind, or had built up for me through any and all of the other people who would have wanted to do that. And it took all of them and was like, are you sure those are real? And I was like, no. And it was started to be a long process of what is real. And I think the safest thing you can say at the end of the day is, I don't know.
Yeah.
And we can try and figure it out. But I think with compassion and with keeping the truth in mind, but people don't want to do that. They can't look outside themselves and say, what's the best thing for everybody? What's the best thing for humanity? What's the truth of humanity? It's like, even if they don't realize it, the people are constantly just, what's best for me? What's the truth for me? What's and I think like, this is like something that I always say is like, people will say that kind of stuff. They'll do this, they'll do that. And like, I just watch people. And like, if you watch people driving, it's the same type of thing. I'm on a huge car kick today for some reason. But it's like, people will cut into lanes and then they'll yell at other people. And it's like, hello, do you not see like you're being a dick? Like, you don't need to get there that fast. Like, I get it. Your car is whatever. I get it. You're in a rush. I get it. Whatever. But the point is, you're only thinking about yourself and you are insignificant. You're an insignificant person. The most famous, the wealthiest, whatever people today are literally insignificant. They don't matter. It's like humanity as a whole and how we all continue, like, not the next 10 years, not the next 20 years, the next 1,000 years, the next 5,000 years, the next however many years. That's what I think is the most important, because we have this wash of history, It's like, we are so important to ourselves and our lives, and it's so significant. But if you just look at like the lifespan of a human being and what everything is, and we and me and my sister, it's like, no, you're part of this tiny thing that's part of a way bigger thing, and this bigger thing is going to keep moving, And we remember names of people like, Genghis Khan, and like, Lincoln is huge. I read a lot of older books, and people from the 19th century were fucking in love with Lincoln. They always mention Lincoln. Lincoln was so huge. People today don't understand how fucking big of an impact Lincoln made on people. Because
he said something that, it's funny you say that, because I just heard a quote from Lincoln today that I need to find while you're talking,
right,
because it was really weird.
Well, but it's interesting reading books from the 19th century, and Lincoln was in every book. Lincoln, people like, he wasn't like the main thing necessarily, but he was always mentioned. He was an important figure. They'd be like Julius Caesar and Lincoln. Like, he was always there. And it's funny today thinking about even like from the last 40 years, 60, 100 years of reading people's works, and Lincoln's already starting to taper off as like not being as much of like an important figure. I mean, he still is, but the grand public is not in tune with him anymore.
I feel like he's like the John F. Kennedy of back then. Just
right.
like everyone
is
like, oh my God. Probably the assassination part has something to do with that. But.
I mean, that's a huge part, but he was a significant leader, and I think he is a fairly decent comparison for this century. But, and how long till Genghis Khan gets forgotten? How long until Julius Caesar gets forgotten? And then, this next wave of people are going to, it's like, I don't know. I don't know exactly why I'm ranting exactly this way, but it just bothers me that people are just so enveloped in their own ideas, and I do it too. I get caught up in it, and I'm not perfect, but I try to keep coming back to the place of like, I don't know. I'm doing the best I can with the information I have, and I'm open to more ideas. Yeah. And did you find the quote?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, I'm trying, because I was kind of going down an alternative history like rabbit hole, and again, I don't really subscribe to anything. I kind of just want to know a little bit of everything. And obviously there's so much talk about like giants and shit. Like,
yeah, giants are huge.
Much. Everyone talks about them. Literally.
Get it?
Get it? Get it?
You get
Please,
it, guys?
Get it? No. No, it's so hang on. There's one where he talks about giants, and I found it, but I don't know if it's real or not. Like,
Didn't Lincoln smoke weed too?
Probably. Everyone did back then.
Yeah, well, it was mostly just like CBD and like relaxing.
Yeah.
Low THC. Because it was still hemp. Hemp was a huge thing for a long time.
So yeah, I think this is one of his, so I don't think it's not actually him then.
I remember some type of giant quote with Lincoln.
It's the eyes of that species of extinct giants whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now. Contemporary with the whole race of men, and older than the first man, Niagara is strong and fresh today as 10,000 years ago.
Yeah. I remember that quote.
Oh, wait.
I've heard that quote.
The mammoth and mastodon, now so long dead that fragments of their monstrous bones alone testify that they never lived, have gazed on Niagara. That's misleading. People take that quote out of context. He was probably talking about mammoths and shit. Oh my god. I'd like to think giants are real.
What they want to believe.
I think it's pretty cool. I'm like, if the like prehistoric giantism thing, I was talking about it today with my coworkers, because I'm like, if we're willing to believe that, like, well, and not willing to believe, but if it's, you know, if we have like fossils and stuff of like giant sloths and like giant dragonflies that were like fucking massive because of how much oxygen was in the atmosphere, it's like, so things could get that big, but they weren't allowed to get any bigger, you know? Like, because people are like, things used to be giant, but not too giant. Okay. Not as big as you conspiracy people are saying. And so I'm just kind of like, so things were bigger than they are now, but once they're a little too big for your definition, that means they're fake, you know?
Well, I think it's just always the case. And I think the other thing is that humans are so imaginative and we're so creative. And I think like not to call you out, because I don't think that's, I don't think you're doing anything wrong, but like with the emotional appeal of you connecting with a woman in the past, we're emotional creatures. And I've taken, I always will end up bringing up sales every now and again, because I'm like super passionate about sales and persuasion. Because if you're going to convince somebody of your viewpoint, you can either manipulate them, gaslight them, or persuade them. Yeah. Pretty much. And so persuasion is very important, and sales is very important, because being able to articulate your point of view and being able to show somebody, you know, your way in a way that benefits both parties, that's the true purest way, is very important. And I've taken sales courses, blah, 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 blah. But one thing they teach in sales is that people make decisions based on emotion. Mm-hmm. We think we're smart. We think we're cool. We think we're whatever. And the truth is, almost every single decision you make is based on emotion. Yep. And so, especially buying decisions, but, you know, we don't make decisions because we're just always clear-headed or it's super informational and intellectual. And what it's like, we are emotional creatures. That's how we make decisions. And I think if you don't know that, and if you're not reminded of that, you know, we get into these places where we get caught up and trapped, and we emotionally react to things, and we emotionally attach to things and then try to prove them right, you know. And emotionally, I think it'd be sick if humans have been around for millions of years and humanity and Earth are a contained sort of like unit that works together, that's interconnected and, you know, whatever, and it's like super spiritual and metaphysical and much more than, you know, just physical and whatever. But that's also my emotional answer, you know. It's not like I'm, you know, gonna say that that's right or I think that that's the true thing. It's like, you know, does that make sense to me? Sure, yeah. But, you know, we're all emotional, and I think we just always forget that, but we're always out here constantly making emotional decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of my investment in a lot of different theories and stuff is very emotional.
Well, and that's like we talk about too, is like the flat earth theory. And for everyone out there, it's worth I've mentioned it in this podcast once. I won't do a Valorant story. I will do a very quick history of my flat earth excursion. I was very deep into conspiracy theories because I just found them super fascinating, and I was like trying to look up, like you were talking about, anything alternative. Like, what does everybody say?
We both were at one point, and so we tend to talk about it a lot, about our escapades.
Yeah.
So carry on.
Yeah. So what are the other stuff? There's not a wrong answer, nothing too weird. And I found myself just like, I didn't necessarily believe in a lot of stuff, but I'd try on a lot of ideas and I'd try on a lot of stuff. And like I said, I still don't believe like anything necessarily, but I found flat earth theory and I was like, wow, this is super interesting. And I'd see some of the stuff that they'd say and I was like, well, some of that makes sense and this and that. And that's not important. What's important is it was before like the wave hit in like 2013 or 14 or whatever it was. I'd found it like right before that because that's when I had my conspiracy phase, and it was so interesting. I would tell people, I'd be like, yeah, hey guys, I found this conspiracy theory where people are saying the earth is still flat. They're saying the earth is flat. And people, these were my friends, and I'd been telling them reptilian shapeshifter overlords were ruling the world, and that aliens were this and that and the other, and genetically modified apes to make humans. That was fine. They were like, wow, that's crazy. But when I said the world's flat, they were like, are you okay?
Yeah.
And they would get mad and they would get emotional. And it was so, I noticed the difference. That was the best thing about that theory for me, was that when I would tell people, I knew what I started to know what their response would be. And deviously, I would kind of do it on purpose because it was fun.
Yeah.
But I would tell people and I'd just watch them and they'd just get emotional. They'd get mad. And I was like, what the? I can tell you about reptilian overlords, alien reptilian overlords, and people are like, yeah, sure, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or like, whatever, it could be, what, sure. I'd be like, this happened, and they'd be like, yeah, whatever. But I tell you the world's flat and you get emotional.
It's really weird. Yeah.
And I just am like, okay. And I think I just wanted to know why people got so emotional about that. And I think I've thought about it a lot over the years, and I think part of it is the fact that it would be a fundamental change to reality, which is almost like it can't happen because people feel safe and secure knowing where they are.
Like, at least I know the earth is fucking round.
I know the earth is round.
Like, I don't know much, but at least I know that.
I know where I live. I live in space. I'm this far from the sun in this I have my positioning in reality.
Yeah.
And if you take that away from people, they get emotional. I think that's what it is. I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
Because it's just, and I don't care if the world's flat or round and whatever. And, we've talked about it where it's like, with all the research that I did, there were so many things that NASA does that are really shady.
They're weird, yeah.
There's so many weird things. So I am totally undecided about anything like that because I don't know. I don't know enough. And I know the flat earthers proved themselves wrong in that one experiment that they did, and they proved the curvature of the world. They like got all the people together and they were like, we're going to prove it once and for all. And they were like, so our data says the world's round.
Yeah, well, and wasn't there like a thing that they were like, gathering flat earthers around the globe? Like they had like a poster or some shit.
That was like
and
their
it's like,
slogan, flat earthers around the world.
I was like, interesting.
Oh,
yeah, they mentioned a globe specifically in something, and I was like,
right.
no, but I think that group of people, I do wonder if that's there by design, because those people that get the media coverage are like so absurd with it that the people who are actually questioning like what is going on the earth are like put into that category and immediately dismissed, and again, like the CIA invented conspiracy theories, like the term conspiracy theory to
JFK.
invalidate people. So I do wonder if with those things, if they're like plants, like I can't help but wonder if they are.
We don't know.
Another conspiracy.
I mean, the rabbit hole goes deep, but I think the reason I brought it up was that I think if people lose their bearing of where they are in reality and that type of deal, they start to get emotional because then now you don't have solid footing. And I understand in life, we can't always just keep going backwards because we'd never get anywhere. We can't always be questioning every tiny single thing about reality, or else we'd never leave our house.
Yeah.
And so I get it. There are certain things we either have to accept and move on, whether it's right or not, or we have to just keep building on what we have and maybe fix it later. I do get that to a degree, but again, the emotional dissuasion of people was just like so astonishing to me, because that was the one where people really got upset. They got upset, like unlike any other thing. And I think it just has to do with the fact that people are rooted in their worldview, and if they aren't right, and if they don't know where they are, and if they don't have a grasp on themselves and their reality and where they are in it, they start to lose it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I was gonna say what I really enjoy about our talks about all of this and just who we are as people is I feel like we both are very willing to question, and we can be really stubborn with certain things, but you were saying that about like, you know, that being part of your worldview, and like for me there's something exciting about my worldview being proven wrong. Like, do you feel that way?
What did I say about my worldview?
No, like just people's worldviews. They get so emotional about it because if it changes or starts to crumble, they don't know what to do.
Right,
and
right.
there are a lot of these types of things where I gravitate towards them so much because I'm like, if this is true, this makes like everything fall apart. And for some reason, that's
Right.
very intriguing to me. I don't know if exciting's a bad word. It's like, it's super intriguing to be like, because I'm such a what's it called, I just like thinking about anything and everything, you know, anything
Right.
and everything happening. And so for that to be like, you know, if we found out aliens existed, what would that mean for religion, you know, stuff like that, where it's like religion would fall apart if aliens were really there and
They'd
like
find
we
a
weren't
verse.
it, you know. They'd be like, it's God's way. No, but I do, obviously there are things in my life where like I have different things in my life that would be like, that would crush my reality. I'm not saying I'm like immune to it. It's just not the same things as the people that we've talked to. Like you and I can talk about flat earth, space not being real, the moon being fake, whatever, and it doesn't emotionally upset me as much as I'm like, I think they are real though. But I'm
Right.
not, I don't get mad, I don't get upset. I'm like, no, this is fun to question. Like, what
Right.
would that mean if the moon was fake?
Well,
What would that even fucking mean? You know, I don't think that's actually a conspiracy.
No,
I
some
don't
people
know,
think
but-
it's a like a space station that was put
Yeah,
there. That
it's
was
like,
built.
I don't really like it.
That's a conspiracy
yeah,
theory.
I don't get upset hearing those. I'm kind of like, I like entertaining the thought of like,
Yeah.
oh shit, what if? Like, you know, and like how you talked about people getting really emotional. Mine was the fucking moon landing. People get real upset about the moon landing.
Yeah, the moon landing
Holy shit.
is a very touchy subject.
Yeah.
That's
people
another
get
one.
real upset, and it doesn't.
Well, and I
that
don't
one
know
makes
if you
a little bit
know
more sense to me.
if you know the saga of like Joe Rogan. There was this weird thing with Joe Rogan where so he used to say
Wait, yes.
he used to be like, the moon landing is fucking fake. There's no way, like blah, blah, blah. And then there was like this weird moment where he like switched really hard and people were like, Joe, what the fuck?
Too many people have their eyes on him now.
And I was like, Joe, what the fuck? You're like,
Too
you're out
many
here,
people
like,
are in his pockets
wait
now.
a second, Joe,
Yeah.
come on.
Joe.
You're a man of the people.
You know, I have my thoughts on it, but at the same time, I just like, again, I like
Well,
entertaining the fact of what if we faked it? That would be fucking crazy.
Yeah, well, I think two things is like the whole thing of basically like you and I are very open-minded, and I think there are a wide range of people. The majority of them are either I know what's going on, and if you tell me something else, I'm going to debate you, or let me hear what you have to say, and then we can talk about it, think about it, figure it out, and we don't need an answer by the time we're done talking. And I think you and me we don't need an answer by the time we're done talking.
Yeah, we rarely come to like a conclusion. We just kind of like say a bunch of shit and then we're like, no resolution there. Let's keep going.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, we'll be like, yeah, wouldn't it be crazy? And I think that's that big thing about it, where it's like there's those two types of people, and I think a kind of like, again, with the flat earth thing, what it means is way more important than what's true.
Right.
For a lot of people, I think for me, what's true is the whole deal.
Yeah.
Whatever's true, I am in pursuit of that, and I want to know that. And
Yeah.
I am so down for trying to figure out what that is. And if it's not true, let's throw it away because we don't need that.
Yeah.
But,
Well, and conspiracies open the door to start questioning. I think, you know, some people are very like, this is what the conspiracy theory says, and I believe all of that wholeheartedly. But I think for me, and probably you, especially with flat earth, it's like, it just opens up like, oh, I didn't know. You know, there's some things where they're so ingrained that you don't even know that you can question them. You know, does that make sense? Where it's like all of a sudden you're
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh yeah, like I can totally question this, you know? And
Well,
so
because we're told not to, and because
yeah.
like with the archaeological type people, you start to, they don't just say you're wrong, here's why, I can explain it in plain English. They start to call you names.
Yeah.
They start to like mess with your money, your job,
Yeah.
your position. Like they start to get
take away your
really
credibility.
fucking weird.
Yeah.
And it's like, yo,
Yeah,
hello?
he's just like, the crazy thing is that like, especially there's so many people where it's like they're just proposing an idea, like they're just asking questions, and you are like ruining their life for just posing a question.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I always come back to, where it starts to get fishy at that point, because
Yeah,
that's
really
where it's
weird.
like, you're saying you have so much hubris, you are so self-centered and egotistical that you're willing to go to these lengths to prove that you're definitely not wrong, or you're hiding something. Or there is a real reason why you cannot be wrong,
Right.
because something's going on. And that's why it starts to get fishy,
Yeah.
because it's like, hold up.
Yeah, it's like plenty of, you know, quote unquote crazy people have theories about everything and anything, and their
Oh, yeah.
reputations aren't being dragged through the mud. It's the people who are pretty mild with what they're saying that are like,
especially-
really like, just, you know, there's a lot more attention put on them because they're more grounded. They tend to gain more of a following, like, you know, they're more educated, you know, that kind of stuff. And so it's like, it's just, yeah, it's crazy to see, especially when you just look up certain scientists' names or certain whistleblowers' names, and just the terms that they're being called by these really like serious news, you know,
They do.
like
Well,
companies. It's just like, what?
earlier, they were the ones that you called reputable sources. And that's the thing. I almost corrected you, not corrected, but I almost suggested mainstream.
Yeah, mainstream.
Because that's the thing, is we are trained, well, we aren't, but the public is generally trained like with the Washington Post, the New York Times, Science Magazine.
Right.
It's peer reviewed. It's like, you know, if me and my buddies make a magazine and I'll decide who can publish in it, like, fuck us. Like,
Yeah.
who cares? Like, you know, and I think that's where people also start to fall into that trap, because that was the other thing, is like with the flat earth type thing, is that's one of the main things people would say. Are you telling me all of those scientists? You're telling me all of the scientists? I'm like, yeah, I think stranger
The
things
ones
have
that get a
happened.
Like,
Like,
yeah.
I'm not, like, people have conspired to do things before. Like, I don't think it's that far-fetched that people willingly or unwittingly would be indoctrinated or pushing a particular narrative for a particular reason if they have enough vested interest in a particular thing. I mean, it's not that crazy of a thing to say. And yet that's what people say, is like, well, could everybody be wrong? And it's like, if all your friends jump off a bridge, are you going to jump off too? Like, probably, actually, if the herd is that big, you probably will.
Yeah, that's how it is. That's like, yeah, everyone, there's this whole disguise of like, everyone is their own person. And yeah, like if your friend jumped off a bridge, would you? And like, you know, go against the grain and all of that. And it's like, no, like every psychological experiment has proven that we will follow blindly every single time.
Yeah.
Because we're
do.
we're safety oriented. We're herd mind oriented in the sense of, you know, we're like, if this, and I think nowadays it's more of, if this not protects me physically, you know, if this protects me emotionally, if this protects me socially, like, yeah, I'll go with it, you know, and you don't even think about it. Like, you look at some of these like psychological experiments that have been taped where like someone, like the elevator doors will open and everyone's standing in the elevator backwards.
Right.
And what do? You go in and stand backwards.
Right. Yep.
Or there was one where people were in a doctor's office and a bell would ring and everyone besides the test subject would stand up when the bell rang, and then they would sit back down, just waiting in a doctor's office. And after like the third time, that person started standing up during the bell. No clue why they were doing it, but they just did.
That's how it works.
Yeah, it's
that's
like that's
we do.
what we're made to do. Like we do that.
Yeah.
And if you think we don't, you're dumb.
Well, do you want to keep going?
Look at us. Oh, the gram cam's all blurry.
Oh no.
Let's see if we can make it. Sage in the corner. Focus, please.
See, that's the problem is something probably got close. And it is focused close. Well, I think that's a good place to stop then.
Yeah, probably.
Well, let us know what you guys think. If you are a flat earther, or if you work at SpaceX, or if you're Elon Musk, or if you're a reptilian overlord at work at the government.
Yep.
Or if you are from the past and you know the true origins of humanity, we want to know.
Yeah, we do. We also want to know, like, what's a conspiracy theory you really believe in? Maybe we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Or do you hate conspiracy theories and you're totally normal?
Or yeah, what's one? Or you could say, like, what's the craziest, dumbest one you've ever heard? We'll read those too, you know?
Yep.
Yep.
Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.